This is the fourth part of Atal-Nomics. Here we are discussing the legacy and the prominent role played by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the development of Indian economy. And this is the fourth part, and this is basically a very important discussion because this policy has changed the fiscal picture of the Indian economy. Fiscal means the government. This video is about Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, which is also called FRBM 2003. Let us discuss the background first. Since 1980s, the fiscal situation of the fiscal situation of the Indian economy started worsening. That means it was deteriorating. It was not performing very good. Fiscal deficit was continuously increasing. This was also a duration when RBI was indirectly controlled by the government. That means RBI had to follow the whims and fancies of the government. In 1980, there was a crisis in Gulf. In late 1970s, there was a crisis in Gulf. In 1983, there was global crisis, global economic crisis. By 1990s, we have faced the balance of payment crisis. We will discuss all this in the various videos because we cannot cover everything in a short span of time. But to a certain extent, you should understand 1980s, this was the era of Rajiv Gandhi government. He started in his time. The government started taking a very important role. The concept of Jawahar Rozgar Yojana was there. The concept of computerization has been started. So the government expenditure increased phenomenally. And whenever the government required the money, it used to direct the RBI to print the money, and that is why I said that RBI was not having the full autonomy. It was controlled indirectly by the government. And continuously the expenditure of the government has increased. Whenever the expenditure is more than income, this is called fiscal deficit. This is a very important macroeconomic term, which we can discuss in the later part of the chapter, but here we have to discuss in a small amount only. See, in 1990s it was a balance of payment crisis, because again in late 1980s there was a Gulf War, and again the situation of the government accounts have gone worsening. Again the fiscal deficit have increased because government was importing, the Indian economy is importing more than 70% of the oil from outside. So this was a situation of crisis. Again, you have promoted what? Liberalization. You have opened the channels of funding from outside. It was globalization, liberalization, privatization. And what we thought that it is going to solve all the problems. But again, by late 1990s, again, government was not able to control the fiscal deficit. Again, the same issue has been started. So what is the accountability of the government in fiscal account? Can government spend infinite money? Or there is a need of accountability? There is a need of efficiency. So the debate has been started for the second time in 1990s. In the late 1990s. Because even if you have promoted LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization, then also you need to promote the A's of doing business. You need to promote the A's of doing business. That means you need to make the basic infrastructure. Roads, railways, power plants, because private sector requires the basic infrastructure to perform efficiently. So that is why the government expenditure started. Continuously starting from 1980s, we can draw a proper diagram like this, that this is showing that increase in the fiscal deficit. Now there is one article in the constitution that is called Article 292. It talks about that the parliament can put a limit on the borrowing of the central government. That means if parliament want, it can make the government accountable on the management of the accounts. And that is why the debate is started once more that there is a need that parliament should control the fiscal performance of the government, and that is why to introduce a new act few people had taken the encouragement and the FRBM Act was passed in 2003. Although it was passed in 2003, but the debate started from the 1990s only. It has taken time. Now, what is there in the FRBM Act 2003? According to the FRBM Act 2003, government need to reduce the deficit. Both the deficit on the fiscal deficit as well as the revenue deficit. At the same time, government should give autonomy to the RBI. So what were the recommendations in the FRBM Act? First recommendation was fiscal deficit should be brought to 3% of GDP by 2008 and 9. Second, revenue deficit should be reduced to 0. Third, RBI should be given autonomy. That means government cannot direct the RBI to print the money. Government will have to do the discussion, debate with the RBI, and RBI will have to agree that yes, this much amount of money is required by the government and this can be provided, because the mandate of RBI, as we have discussed in the monetary policy also, is the price control, price stability. Yes, so you need to give the RBI autonomy. Every time you cannot direct the RBI to print the money, because finally it is going to cause the inflation, and at the same time it is challenging the autonomy of the RBI. So these were the recommendations of the FRBM Act, and it has changed the picture of Indian economy once more. And this was brought by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and that is also one of the most important scheme brought by the Atal-Nomics. Now, when you connect the same thing with the current, is that what has been promised in the FRBM Act 2003, the promise was that the government expenditure should be controlled. And who is going to control that thing? According to Article 292, the Parliament is going to make the government accountable. Now, how Parliament has to make the government accountable? Every year, along with the budget, government will have to present few documents. First document is macroeconomic framework document. Second document, fiscal policy strategy statement. Third document, expenditure statement. Fiscal policy strategy statement, and along with that, government will have to present the numbers of revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, what is the debt of the government as a percentage of GDP, that is called debt to GDP ratio, effective revenue deficit, that means the revenue deficit minus the grants given to the state, revenue deficit minus the grants given to states for capital creation. These are specific terms. And also along with the future targets of expenditure, the future strategy, the macroeconomic framework agreement is document, that means what is going to be the economic growth in the coming years and what are the assumptions. For example, if currently we talk about FRBM, then the government will say the assumption is GST. With the help of GST, the growth will be 7 or 8%. That means macroeconomic framework agreement is going to tell the assumptions as well as the assessment of economic growth. What will be the GDP? Fiscal policy strategy agreement will tell the strategy of the government in the near term. Expenditure statement is going to tell the expenditure of the government in health, education, etc. Along with 5 indicators: revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, debt to GDP ratio, effective revenue deficit plus GDP. All these documents need to be present in the Parliament along with the budget, and that has been made compulsory by the FRBM Act. That means it has ensured fiscal accountability for the first time, giving autonomy to the RBI. So if you discuss the benefits of the FRBM Act, The first benefit was that it has promoted intergenerational equity. That means if the current government is spending huge, the interest liability for the future generations will increase. So that is why if the current government is going to be accountable, automatically there is a more room for the coming government to do the expenditure according to the situation of the Indian economy. It promoted intergenerational equity. Second benefit, it promotes the convergence between fiscal and monetary policy. Why? Because from now onwards RBI is autonomous. RBI will have to agree with the government that this much of money is okay and I can give to the government. Third benefit was that it enforced the accountability, and that accountability is particularly coming from Parliament, and Parliament is supreme in our country because we are having parliamentary democracy in our society. So this was also the benefit brought by the FRBM Act. It has given autonomy to RBI. It has given autonomy to RBI. And the fifth benefit was that if the government is borrowing less from the market, that means private investment, private sector can get the funds, that is private sector participation increased. Why? Because if the government is going to borrow huge amount of money, private sector will not be able to get the money. So in that situation, it is going to crowd out the private investment. Private investment will be discouraged because private sectors need the money and government is also borrowing there. So if government is not going to limit the borrowing, that means the opportunity for the private sector will be reduced. So these were the benefits of the FRBM Act, which was started by the Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Now how you can connect this thing with the current situation? See, the debate that was started in 2003 is valid till today. In 2003, the FRBM Act was passed. It was passed in 2003. In 2016, we have set up one FRBM committee that was also called N.K. Singh Committee. And this committee was there to check the working of FRBM Act, and the recommendations of N.K. Singh Committee has talked about. It said there should be one independent review of the fiscal accountability. Government is going to present the target in the parliament. There is going to be a debate and discussions, but there is also a need of autonomous fiscal council. This is a recommendation of N.K. Singh Committee to further strengthen the FRBM Act. How? See, government presenting the document in front of Parliament, but if the government is having the majority, automatically whatever the performance of the government is there, nobody can make the government accountable if it is getting the majority. If you are having the independent autonomous fiscal council that is going to present a report on the performance of FRBM Act by the government, and that is going to present the same report in Parliament, and our independent assessment will give the clear data and the clear performance. So this is a recommendation. And also the second recommendation is that debt to GDP ratio of center plus state should be within 60%. That means the debt of the central plus state government should be less than 60% of the GDP of the central and the state government. And these recommendations have been accepted recently in 2018-19 budget of the country. Government has accepted that it is going to reduce the debt of central and the state government within the 60% as recommended by the N.K. Singh Committee. And also there is one more important recommendation by the FRBM Committee is that there should be a fiscal ban in spite of a fixed target. See, this is a very important debate. If you are having a fixed target, and if in your economy some uncertainty is going to come, you may not be able to follow the target. That means if you give a fixed target for the next 1 year, That is what you consider. You consider that government is going to achieve that target. But at that point of time, you don't understand the dynamics of the Indian economy. It is continuously changing. If in the 1 year, some economic crisis is going to come, then certainly government will have to spend more and government will have to miss the target. So that is why a fixed target of the fiscal deficit may not be right according to the condition of the Indian economy, and that is why we have talked about band. Band, for example, 3 to 3.5%. If you are in this band, for example, you have attained 3% of the GDP as the fiscal deficit, and if some economic crisis is going to come, in this situation at least you can do some expenditure, and then also you are within this band. If you are following the fixed target concept, certainly you won't be able to achieve target anytime, and that has been seen in the experience of the FRBM Act, because in 2008 we have seen the crisis. Because of the crisis, the expenditure of the government has increased, and we were never able to achieve the FRBM Act, and that is why many people say that we have reduced the FRBM Act as a directive principle of the state policy, because every time we have changed the target according to the situation. So there is a need to give a band, like you have given the band in inflation targeting, like for example 3 to 3.5%. If you are within this band, you can take any policy initiative. Certainly your expenditure will increase, but you are within the limit provided by the band, and that has been accepted by the NK Singh committee. Because currently from 2008 we are seeing the economic crisis, government will have to do the expenditure, otherwise the Indian economy will fail, and that is why government will have to miss the fixed target. So there was a debate whether you should have a fixed target or you should have the fiscal band. There is the acceptance now that we should have the fiscal band. This is all about the FRBM Act. This FRBM Act, that means the accountability of the government in fiscal terms, started by the Atal-Bihari Vajpayee, and that is why this is also one of the most important contribution of the Atal-Bihari Vajpayee in the field of Indian economics. That's all for this discussion. Thank you so much for watching. We will continue with the debate in the next discussion. Thank you.